You're listening to AQS Inmate Call, where the talk about justice, accountability, and the people whose lives are too often reduced to headlines. And today's episode is about someone whose name deserves more than a headline, Tina Stewart, a woman whose life was taken in a moment of violence that should never have happened. Tina was a daughter, a friend, a person with a future. And her death forces us to confront a painful truth. We are not doing enough to prevent repeat violence, especially from individuals with known histories of harm. Today, we're going to talk about Tina's story, the systematic failures that allowed this to happen, and whether tools like a public registry, similar to the one used for sexual offenders, could help prevent tragedies like this in the future. According to reporting from Crim News, Tina Stewart was killed by her boyfriend in Newman Lake, Washington, after a history of escalating violence. The details are heartbreaking, and they're familiar, too familiar. A pattern of control, isolation, and prior incidents that never triggered the kind of intervention that might have saved her life. When we talk about violence, especially inmate partner violence, we often focus on the final act. But the truth is, these tragedies are almost always preceded by warning signs. And those warning signs are often known by neighbors, by law enforcement, sometimes even by the courts. Tina's death is not just a personal tragedy, it's a systematic failure. Here's the uncomfortable reality. People who commit violent offenses, especially domestic violence, often reoffend. Not always, but often enough that ignoring the pattern is dangerous. We have systems designed to track certain kinds of risk. Sexual offenders, for example, are required to register. Their information is public. Communities can see who lives nearby, and law enforcement can monitor compliance. But when it comes to repeat violent offenders, especially those with histories of domestic violence, the tools are far weaker. Records are scattered. Protection orders expire. Background checks vary by state. And victims are often left to navigate danger alone. Tina's case forces us to ask, why don't we treat repeat violent behavior with the same seriousness we treat sexual offenses? Let's talk about the big question. Is it feasible or even wise to create a registry for violent offenders? Here's what we know. Some states have tried versions of this. A few states maintain domestic violence offender registries. Though most are not public, they're used internally by courts and law enforcement. A public registry raises real concerns, such as privacy, due process, risk of vigilantism, the possibility of branding someone for life, even after they're rehabilitated. These concerns are legitimate. Any policy that affects people's lives and safety must be built carefully, not reactively. But the status quo is failing. Victims often have no way to know whether a partner has a history of violence. Communities have no visibility into repeat offenders, and law enforcement lacks unified system to track patterns across jurisdictions. A middle ground approach is possible. Instead of broad public registry, some experts propose a confidential law enforcement only violent offenders database. Mandatory disclosure laws for individuals with repeat domestic violence convictions, longer retention of protection order violations, and cross-state data sharing, so someone can't simply move to avoid scrutiny. These tools could save lives without creating a system that permanently marks people who have already served their sentences. The question isn't whether we should punish people forever. The question is whether we can build systems that prevent predictable harm. Preventing the next tragedy means more than tracking offenders. It means building a safety net that actually works. We need early intervention, when violence escalates, better enforcement of protection orders, stronger support for survivors, housing, legal help, financial stability, mandatory risk assessments for repeat offenders, and community-based monitoring that doesn't rely on victims to report every violation. Tina's death wasn't inevitable. It was preventable. And prevention requires systems that see the whole picture, not just the final act. Tina Stewart deserved safety. She deserved a future. And the best way to honor her is to fight for a world where no one else becomes the next headline. A registry, whether public or confidential, isn't a magic solution, but it's part of a larger conversation about accountability, transparency, and the responsibility we all share to protect people from predictable harm. If we want to prevent the next tragedy, we have to build systems that take violence seriously the first time, not the last time. Thank you for listening to AQS Inmate Call. And if this episode moved you, share it. Talk about it. Push for change in our community, because safety shouldn't depend on luck. It should depend on systems that work.